This is Sarah Heredia, and you are listening to the Freely You podcast. Our time together is meant to inspire you to think bigger and empower you to live your life in a way that makes you proud to be you. I believe that the only box you should fit in is the one that you build for yourself, and I'm here to help you lay the foundation. My journey has taught me that we all deserve to create our own definition of success while meeting ourselves with love and a playful curiosity. My goal is to provide practical tools and fresh perspectives so you can rewrite your story, start living your life on purpose, and ultimately become more freely you. Hello, welcome back to the Freely You podcast. So happy to have you with me here today. I do have a very special guest with me, Erica Knoll. Hello, Erica. Welcome.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. So I invited Erica to be on my podcast for quite a few reasons, actually. So Erica is a former one-on-one client of mine. She also came to my very first retreat and traveled all the way to the Rocky Mountains from New Jersey. So she was like the MVP of that retreat, traveled the furthest by far. And she is also a self-published author. She is a self-love advocate and teacher. And I would say, most importantly, she's someone who has chosen to follow her dreams, even though in her logical brain, it didn't seem like the natural path or the path that made the most sense, but she is doing the damn thing and crushing it, if I do say so myself. So we're just going to jump right in. I want Erica to share some of her story today because I think that you're going to find inspiration in her courage and the things that she's been able to accomplish just by simply committing to doing what feels right rather than what makes sense. And so, Erica, tell me a little bit about, you were a teacher for 15 years. So tell me a little bit about your career. And ultimately, when I met you, you were coming to the end of that career and you had a knowing that it was time to move on. But that wasn't an easy decision for you. So I'd love to just hear about that and what kind of got you to that place after all that time and effort put into that career following and like just knowing that it was time for a change.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for that lovely introduction. It was better than anything I would have said.
All true, by the way, all true.
Thank you, thank you. But yeah, I was a teacher for 15 years, and I really didn't have the nudge to leave until year 14. So I feel pretty grateful to have had a career that was so fulfilling for so long. But year 14 was by far the toughest year in my whole career. I had a lot of personal stuff going on. I had a tragic loss. My coworkers had a lot of personal stuff going on. There was a lot of stuff behind the scenes of the school, additional COVID protocols, things like that, that were still going on. And it was a tough, tough year. And I was miserable. So that's when the nudge first came because that feeling was new to me. So I worked in preschool my whole career. So it goes without saying that I've had tough classes. I've had, a run for my money with some years, but I never had that misery, that dread, that like, oh my God, I can't wait for this to be over. I don't want to be here anymore. Like the good always outweighed the bad. So that was new for me, but I took so many mental health days that year. I had what I believe they call sleep procrastination. Like I would push going to bed until the latest I possibly could because I didn't want morning to come and have to go to work the next day. I would sit in the parking lot almost in tears of like, I really just don't want to be here. So that was a big deal for me. And then I hired you, which I know we're going to talk about more. So I won't get super into that right now. That'll be a different segment. But I had hired you that summer and ultimately decided that year 15 was going to be my deciding year. I didn't want the personal aspects of what I went through to be the reason I left, because I was worried that, as that personal stuff lifted, maybe that dread wouldn't be there. And maybe it had nothing to do with the job and it was just my personal life. So I didn't want that to be the deciding factor on just like up and leaving. I am also the type of person that has to exhaust every possible option to make sure that I am making the right decision. That is the logical overthinker in me. So I went into year 15 doing everything quote unquote right. I was more prepared than I had ever been. I had looked back at what about the actual job was upsetting me the year before and prepared for that. I limited my stress and my overwhelm by prioritizing my tasks. I no longer stayed late or came in early. I did my job and I worked my hours and I left. I even applied for a new position within the district and I actually got the job, and it turned out that I didn't think it was right for me, so I turned it down. And I had a good team. I had a new co-teacher. She was amazing. I've been working with the same aide for all 15 years of my career. By luck of the draw, my class was pretty good. And I still went home every day feeling like I didn't want to go back. And I was like, well, that's telling, because this is an ideal year and I'm still not happy. And that was really how I knew it was time, that like I did everything I needed to do and I was still extremely unhappy.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, first of all, I just want to applaud you because preschool teacher, like, takes a very special person. And so it just says so much about you. And yeah, you're obviously a teacher at heart, a nurturer, extreme amount of patience. And yeah, I've always just had so much respect for teachers in general, but especially those younger years, because man, those kids are wild. But a couple of things that you said that really stand out to me is that you are a planner at heart. That is your nature. You want to know A through Z before you take the first step. And so
Absolutely.
that was when we connected the first time, that was kind of where you were at, where you were still hopeful that maybe this could work out for you. Like maybe the previous year was a fluke. Maybe you weren't exhausted, burnout, ready for something new. Like maybe you just needed a mindset shift. And that was a lot of our initial work, was like looking at, okay, well, what is your mindset, and getting proactive? Like, what can you do differently? What are you in control of? And how can you show up differently? And you did all of it, right? Just as you mentioned, like you set the boundaries and you prepared and you were mentally just like going to give it your all before you made any big decisions. And so I love that you did that, because I know that you needed to do that. I know that where you were at right then, like that was the power move for you, to look at it more like wholly rather than to just say, I'm done. Like, let's exhaust all the options. Let's be sure that this is the right choice for me. And so when you came to that, like when you finally came to the decision that like this isn't it, did you feel fully at peace because you had processed all of that? Or was there still like that uncertainty or doubt?
Uh, that's a good question. I feel like it's very hard for me to be 100% certain, but I felt very confident. And I think you mentioning the mindset shift for me was kind of that I didn't need to be at my rock bottom to make a change, that just me being unhappy and not feeling like this was my passion anymore was okay, and that didn't mean anything about me, because I always felt like I should just be grateful because I have a great job and I have stability and I have all the things, and like I shouldn't want more. I should be grateful. Like people would kill for this. So that was a big mindset shift for me working with you. But yeah, there was still, it was very scary, but it wasn't scary enough to stop me, if that makes sense. Like there was no longer the fear of like procrastinating and putting it off like I had been. So I kind of gave myself that deadline of exhausting all the options. And I told myself, if I do A, B, and C and D doesn't happen, then I'm handing in my resignation. And that's exactly what I did. So I would always say there is that little bit of doubt, and I've played the what if game in my head a little bit, but it wasn't big enough to stop me. I knew I was doing the right thing.
And you talk about that knowing that ultimately you did need to make sure that it was not circumstantial because you had a lot going on personally, but you had the knowing the previous year. And so you did sit with that knowing for over a year. And I think that that is, in the big scheme of things, honestly, not that long, because I feel like I personally sat in that knowing for an extended period, years. But it's, when we have that knowing, when we get that nudge, it's easy to just stay because it's familiar, or because, like you're saying, it had great benefits. You had summers off, you got to travel when you wanted, like so many reasons that you could have said, like, it's not that bad, but you listen to your deeper knowing. And that's a game changer, as everybody's going to hear. But with the other thing that I find really admirable is that you did actually have another opportunity within the school system, and you essentially turned it down, which is huge. That's like the ultimate test, right? It's like, oh, are you sure? Are you sure? Because what about, we're going to dangle this little carrot. So to say no to that, like, tell me, how hard was that for you?
Yeah, that was a big decision. I felt bad for the people around me that I couldn't stop talking and asking for their opinions. So
Yeah.
I actually also have my master's degree with a reading specialist certificate. And being in preschool, you don't really do much with that because they're generally not reading yet. So I thought, let me use that. There was a position open, which they called academic mastery, which is basically like a reading coach. So I'd be working with a small group of kids, throughout the day that needed help with literacy. And it sounded great. And it was really scary because it would be in a different school, different age level. Like that would go up to like fifth grade. So I was definitely not well versed in that. But I had one and only one deal breaker in taking the position. And that deal breaker came up and would be a part of the position. So I sat with it they told me that I received the position on a Friday. So I sat with it for the weekend. And on Monday, I ultimately told them that I wasn't going to accept it because I just felt like to only have one deal breaker and that's in there, like I've come this far trusting myself. I need to listen to myself and not make myself more miserable in a position that would not be right for me. So it was scary, but
Mhm.
I had to. I couldn't take it knowing that it was going to be like that.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought up. So that was a huge like belief that you had as well around, you had your master's degree, you put so much time, effort, money into your education. And so I know there was a huge part of you that was like, well, if I don't do this, what I went to school for, like I'm essentially throwing away my education. Like I'm throwing away everything I learned. So can you talk to me about that and what got you to the other side of that?
Yeah, I think that was one of the scariest things about leaving was just leaving that like textbook on paper definition of success. Because I did have what you would consider success. Like I had two college degrees. I actually had three college degrees because education majors have to be double majors. I had the masters. I had the paycheck, the financial stability, the benefits, the retirement, like the whole nine. And it was really hard to walk away from that. And I feel like working for 15 years, I didn't feel as much of like my initial degree being quote unquote wasted, but I never used my master's degree. Like, yeah, it helped me and it made me more knowledgeable. And obviously, there's early literacy concepts that come up in preschool that it helped me with. But overall, like that degree is for like kindergarten, first grade, and beyond. So, like, I never really used it. And it's hard. And I paid for that half out of pocket. Like the school paid half and I paid half. So that was a lot of money. But again, it came down to that mindset shift of that happiness, that I did not want to spend so many more years being unhappy. I told myself that I was thinking, like, if I had just maybe 5 or under years left till retirement, I would ride it out and take all the benefits, all the packages, all the greatness. But I calculated and I had at least 15 to 20 more years of teaching before I can like max out all those benefits. And I was like, that's not worth it for me. Like, that's way too long to just wait for things to get worse, because there were certain things, again, behind the scenes of the school district that were just getting worse and worse and worse. And maybe they would get better. I played that game in my head. Sometimes things do get better, but if they didn't, I wasn't willing to spend another 15 years in it.
Yeah. That's a really, actually, I love that perspective because because you are such a like, you see everything like as it is, your logical brain went and calculated all that. And I don't think a lot of people would do that. And when you really put that into perspective, like, yeah, maybe it's not that bad, or maybe you could get by because of all these things that you're benefiting. But 15 years doing it for the amount of time you've already put in, like, is that really worth it? And when you think about how much you can accomplish in a year, like, I think that's where we get hung up on, quote unquote, starting over. It's because it's like, well, it's going to take years to establish myself. Well, what's the other option? I mean, even if it takes you 3 to 5 years to get your footing and to be doing something new that you love, you're still saving yourself, what, 10 to 15 years at that point, 20 years? Like, I just love that you put that into like real numbers perspective, because it's eye-opening.
Yeah, getting the job right out of college actually made it worse because I was so young and I have to work for so long to get the benefits, that it's like I've been working for 15 years, but I still have to work till I'm like 55, 60, and I started when I was 23. So it was
Yeah. And I'm burnt out.
definitely a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm already over
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
So tell me, so you said that was one of your biggest fears, was like walking away from something that you had, invested so much time, energy, effort into. What else was there for you? What were those like big fears that really like kept you up at night when you were making this decision?
It was mainly the stability, the like the money, the benefits, all of that, because I was kind of like, what am I going to do? Like, where is the money going to come from? Because, it's pretty well known that teachers are wildly underpaid, but I was fortunate enough to work in a higher paying district in my state. So I was not one of those teachers. I did very well for myself, and it scared the crap out of me to just be like, well, I'm done with that. Like, I was close to 6 figures, and that's not easy to walk away from. And I don't say that to brag, and I feel bad for all of the other teachers that are so horribly underpaid. But I put my time in, and I got to the top of our pay scale. Every district has a pay scale that they go by. And it was really, really hard to walk away from that. And the insurance was more like just a mind game almost, I guess. Like, it's like, luckily I'm pretty healthy and I don't use it that much, but I had such good insurance that I never barely had to pay anything, any procedure, anything that I needed. So now, like, having to have my own insurance and have such a high deductible and all that stuff, I'm like, ooh. So it was just really hard to walk away from that stability without a plan B. So I had no idea what was going to come next.
Yeah, and yeah, side note, that's the ballsy part of it, is that you did leave without really knowing. You were writing your book, so you knew you were going to be an author. You knew you were going to have your book, and you knew that was a passion. You were going to follow that. But beyond that, you really were kind of like just leaping and like seeing where you land and where the universe takes you. And that is bold stuff right there. You clearly did it. You made the leap. How long has it been now, Erica, since you've been working your traditional career?
So the school year was up June of 2023. So
So you're almost,
Oh,
you're
yeah,
getting close.
summer will be a year. Yep.
Okay, and so let me ask you this. Are you surviving? Are you able to feed yourself? Are you paying your bills?
I am in a unique situation where I was able to take some time off. So I am currently still not working and just able to pursue my passions right now and my passion projects and things that I want to put out into the world. So far I've been okay. But the day will come when I go back to the workforce at some point. But yes, for right now, I'm still comfortable, which I'm so grateful for.
Yeah, and I think that's it. I mean, that's just, it is such a real fear to have. Our stability is everything, but somehow we always make it work, one way or another. And I think that you're just kind of like living proof of that, that it's all going to be okay, even though it doesn't feel like it in the moment. It feels terrifying, really. So your book is a lot about self-love. That's a ton of the work that you've done that's been just so beautiful. I mean, when I met you, you had already done a lot of the work, but I've seen you take that even deeper at this point. And I know that is part of your mission, is to really share that wealth of knowledge that you've gained on your own with other people, and inspiring them to love themselves more, follow their own dreams and their passions. And so tell me how that your self-love and everything that you had learned up to that point in that department really helped you make this decision. Like, was it self-love that ultimately allowed you to leave the job that wasn't fulfilling you anymore?
Yeah, absolutely. I think 100% because I don't think I would have been able to go through with it if I didn't build that confidence and trust in myself. And I wouldn't have had that if I didn't do all the work on myself. And that came from the work that I did before I met you, and that came from the work that I did with you. And I don't think, and you kind of hit the nail on the head of having that mindset of knowing you're going to be okay no matter what. And I think that's the biggest part of self-love, is just trusting yourself enough to know that whatever happens, you're going to be okay. So for me, like, that didn't mean that things wouldn't be hard or that I wouldn't be scared, but just that I knew that I had what it takes. So I knew I was going to be okay. And that was a big part of it. And if I didn't develop that belief in myself, I don't think I would have been able to go through with it. And I think that's part of the reason that it all happened so fast. Because like I said, like, the thought didn't even cross my mind until year 14. Like, even on the worst of years before that, the thought of actually leaving the profession was never an option for me. I never even thought about it. So I think if I wasn't fortunate enough to have all of that inner work done and have the guidance to get to that point of truly loving myself, I don't think I would have gone through with it. I think we wouldn't be talking right now because I'd be at school.
Yeah. Well, and I agree. Oh, so much. And I think that honestly is why I stayed in misery for so long, is that I wasn't at that place yet where I trusted myself and I had the confidence in myself that I could create whatever I wanted. Like, that didn't exist. And that was the thing that kept me stuck. So it's really powerful that you speak to that. The other thing that is like, I love, is that one of the things that you struggled with, like a concept that I've said on this podcast so many times, and I know I said to you so many times, is like, you have to trust that it's like all working out for you. And that was really challenging for you. Like trust in what? Like, what am I putting my trust in? So that the fact that you said, like, I had the trust in myself, like, that's the tangible part of the trust that you can lean into, right? Like, the trust that everything's working out for me, that's hard to grasp sometimes. But knowing that you can trust yourself, that's real. You can feel that and you can lean on that. So tell me about that. Like, what was the trust in yourself? What did you know to be true at that point?
Again, I think it was just knowing I was going to be okay and knowing it, just a feeling of knowing it was going to be fine. And I think for me too, because I am a logical thinker, like you can add logic to that too. So I was like, okay, what's the worst case scenario? I have no money. Okay, well, then I get a job. Like, it's not the easiest thing in the world to go find another lifelong career, but I can go be a hostess at a restaurant to pay my rent. Like, there are jobs out there everywhere. So it's like, is that what I want to do with my life? Probably not right now, because that's not going to be my next career. But I kind of brought that logic to that inner knowing of like, well, the worst case scenario is that I have to pay for my own insurance. Okay, then I buy my own insurance. The worst case scenario is I need to make more money. Okay, then I get a job, and it's like, but the best case scenario is that I'm okay and things are happening for me and I can put my trust in that while knowing what I can do if things don't work out. Because the truth of the matter is things don't always work out. Like trusting yourself and trusting the process doesn't mean that you're not going to fail, doesn't mean that bad things aren't going to happen. It doesn't mean that everything's going to be rainbows and butterflies. But it's just for me, it's knowing, okay, like for right now, this is where I'm at and I'm doing well. And if the next worst thing happens, well, then I know what action I need to take. And that really
Mm.
helped me.
Totally. Yeah, you're always going to figure it out. And yeah, sometimes, and especially when we're like following our dreams or we have these big goals, it's like we do have to think outside of the box. And that was a lot of our work. It's like it's easy to like zone in and be like, well, here's the options because I went to school and I got the degree and I did the things and I followed the list and I've done it all perfectly to this point. And it's like sometimes you just have to step so far out of the box and get creative, get that hustle mentality, like I'm going to figure it out one way or another. Because at the end of the day, your happiness is so much more important than what's stability if you're miserable, honestly.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So with that too, the other thing that I like saw in you is with the self-love piece is like you're prioritizing your happiness over everything. And that is also the ultimate act of self-love, right? Like looking at everything that you have and being willing to let it all go because your happiness matters the most. So just huge applause to you on that one because it's not the easy decision.
No, it's not. So thank you. It's been a
Have you?
roller coaster.
I bet. Yeah. Well, we haven't caught up on anything career-wise. So I don't even have like the latest updates of what you're doing or anything. But I do want to ask you, like, have you had any regrets about leaving your career? Have you looked back at this point?
I have not. I am grateful to say that I have not had any regrets. I have, like I said, played the what if game a little bit. I've had the, oh my God, what am I doing with my life fear. I've had the, I've only been a teacher my whole life. I don't know what else I can do. So, it hasn't been perfect, but I've never had a moment of like, oh, I wish I didn't do that. So
Mhm.
there aren't any regrets, but I do still have like a couple of fears that surround it. And I also know that with my experience, if I wanted to go back to teaching, I might not get my job back, but like I can definitely do something in the education world if I wanted to. So that comforts me a little bit. But yeah, but I don't have any 100% regrets or had any days where I was like, oh my God, I wish I was still there. I shouldn't have done that.
Yeah. And I think that is such a big that the it feeling so permanent, like I'm making this decision and it's all or nothing. You still have the education, you still have 15 years of experience, you still have all of that. Where if worse came to worse, or you recognized at some point that maybe it was a wrong decision in some aspect, like you can always go back to that, or you can
Right.
always lean on your past in that way. So yeah, I just think that probably is a comforting thought as you move forward. Like, there's just so many options. And that's what I'm always telling everybody. Like, there's a million ways to make money, but we get stuck in the box of like, it has to look like this, or this is what I've always done. So to choose anything beyond that feels terrifying.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I do want to talk about your book. I actually have my copy right here. So
Mhm.
the book is called You Are the Vibe, Your Guide to Getting Out of Your Head into Your Power and Growing from Within. And I love this book so much.
Thank
It's
you.
what, yes, what I love about it, Erica, is that it's like, it's so user friendly and it's not overwhelming. Like, I know when I was beginning my own personal development journey, like if you would have put like, I don't know, some of these like just heavier books in front of me, I think I would have been totally overwhelmed. This book is like, it's a journey, and it's meant to take you on this journey to your own self-discovery and self-love and reflection, and it feels easy. And that's why I love it, because I think that this work should feel easy, inspiring, fun. So tell me how you decided to write a book, first of all.
Well, writing a book is a dream that I've had for like over 10 years now. I've just always wanted to write a book. I've always enjoyed writing. I mentioned having to be a dual major. My second degree is in writing arts. I've just always enjoyed it. I cleaned out my bed under my bed not too long ago and found short stories that I used to write when I was like a teenager. Like, it's just always been a passion of mine. So of course, over the years, like the topic has changed into what I thought I might write about. And it just, after I had gone through everything that I went through and all the inner work that I went through, I was like, I want to share my journey with other people. And the reason that you like it, I wanted to make it conversational, relatable, easy to digest, and easy to embody, because that was something that I struggled with. Like, I have read so many amazing books, but I've also fallen guilty to reading them, loving them, highlighting them, putting them on the shelf, and forgetting I read them. So I wanted to write my journey in a way that the reader could take action steps immediately, which is why the journal prompts are in there. And then just decide what works. So like at the end, like I talk about, like, don't just put the book down, like pick just one practice from the book and decide that that's what you're going to embody. Like, what felt most comfortable to you? What helped you the most? What resonated with you the most? And so You Are the Vibe was born. And that's everything. Everything in there is everything that I did and that I went through. I healed, I grew. All of it is all from my own experience.
Mhm. Which ultimately, yeah, allowed you to leave your career, allowed you to write the book.
Yeah.
And it is like, just as a reference for my listeners, it is like a workbook style. And that's actually what I love about it, because I think it is like, to your point, it's like, it is one thing to highlight it and be like, well, that's great for them. And actually, I'll take a phase that, or a phrase that you said a lot, is like, well, it works for them, but it doesn't work for me. Or it's like, it's
Mhm.
possible for them, but it's not possible for me. And so I think that having this be like, it's you telling your story, yes, and sharing your knowledge, but then it gives the reader a chance to actually implement it into their own lives, which is so much more meaningful than highlighting a page and like hoping that it sticks.
Yeah, absolutely. And I had the intent of like writing it for other people like me who were just kind of coming into this journey. But then as I was writing through it and as I finished and was getting feedback, like it's really something that anybody can use. So, I mean, we all fall out of alignment, we all fall off, and it just kind of is there to either get you started or reignite the spark. I've actually had a couple of very full circle moments where parents of my former students who are now like 13, they said they bought it for their daughters, and I was like in tears. I was like, "Oh my God." So it's really is good
Dang.
for everyone, even just a teenager who's just starting to figure out who he or she is, like, and to get them on this type of path before they even really know what it is. So it really is. I'm so excited with the feedback that I've gotten of how it can really benefit anyone at any point in their journey, at any age. And it's just been an actual absolute pleasure to write and promote.
Yeah, that's actually very interesting that you shared that because my 12-year-old picked it up the other day and like immediately I was like, oh my God, you should start. Like you should get in there because you're absolutely right. And it's so foundational. And I agree, like actually, our dear friend and mentor, Carrie Kugler, who I've shouted out numerous times on this podcast, she said something the other day that just like totally resonated with me. And it's like you look at somebody that's so far ahead in their journey, and what they're never too good to do is like go back to the basics and go back to the foundation. So really, yeah, to your point, like confidence, self-love, self-trust, all of those things are something that we need when we're 12 years old and also when we're so far in our journey, but we get lost in all the noise, it's like come back to what actually matters. And so much of that is your belief in yourself and your willingness to trust yourself. And yeah, you do such a beautiful job of like creating this journey in your book. So tell me about what made this an actual piece of literature rather than just a dream in your heart. What like made you pull the trigger on actually like putting pen to paper and starting writing?
It's funny that you mentioned Carrie because it was actually one of her podcasts about deciding, and I told you it's been on my heart forever. So, and I honestly can't remember what like the quote was, but it was something about just making the decision, like just make the decision, and it just hit me. And I just posted it on a story and I was like, I'm writing a book. And from that day forward, I was like, okay, I put it out there. I got to do it now. And it was such a fun journey. So it's like that. I feel like that happens a lot. Like you finally do the thing and you're like, why did I wait so long to do this? Like, what was the problem? um,
Totally.
but yeah, it just struck a nerve with me that it's like, all right, like I wanted to do this. Like it's time. Like I'm deciding I'm doing this and started typing.
Yeah. I will link that podcast because that one sparked a fire in me too. If you are needing to make some decisions and you're like, choose something big, it's a great listen. But I when I first met you, it was like you were talking about the someday, like someday I'll write a book, someday I'm going to be an author. And it did feel like overnight you're like, no, I'm doing it. And when we started working together, that was part of it is you were like, I'm actually going to start writing my book. And once you started, there was like that initial, like, well, I don't know where to start and I don't know
Mm-hmm.
how to start. I don't know, like, where, yeah, do I go in order? Do I start by one chapter and see how it all lines up? But you just started. And once you started, it came naturally to you. Like it was flowing out of you. Like it went from like one session, you're like, well, I don't know where to start to the next one. Like I wrote 3 chapters yesterday.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, it was hard. I did also invest in a self-publishing course, so that like helped lay out a little bit of like the foundations of it all. And I just let it be easy. And that was something that was important to me too. So I started writing while I was still teaching before I made the decision to like the full decision to leave. So it was basically just a side thing. So I didn't have as much time. So I just did it when I felt it. I did it on the weekends. I did it on my day off, but sometimes like I would wake up early and I've something would hit me. So I would sit down in the morning before work, but I just let it be fun. I didn't have any deadlines for myself. Being self-published, I didn't have a publisher or anything. I hired my own editor and my own graphic designer, so they were really on my timeline. And I just had fun with it. And I didn't have to worry about like I have to do this one because I did have days. I had weeks where it was just like writer's block city and I would type and delete and type and delete. And I'm like, this is not what I want to say. Like, why won't this come out? But not having those deadlines, I was able to just be like, okay, well, I'm not feeling it right now, so I'll walk away and come back later. And when it flowed, it flowed. And it was good. And you
Mm-hmm.
introduced me to as well. I forget the name of it, but like working for 25 minutes and then like just like setting your timer, just doing the work and then taking a break. And that's helpful too, because sometimes when I would do that, what I would type wasn't exactly how I wanted it, but the ideas would be there. And I'd be like, okay, so now next time I sit down, I can flow with this, even though it's not worded exactly how I want it. And so it was really fun. I made sure that I made it fun and I had a really good time writing it.
I love that. Yeah, let it be easy. So Pomodoro technique is the
Yes,
technique that
that's it. I
you're,
knew it started with a P.
yeah. Um, but that is that's where a lot of us get lost. And especially when we do have like these visions that aren't necessarily related to our career, but it's something that we feel passionate about. And we call it a passion project,
Mhm.
but we lose the passion part of it. We lose the part where we're so excited about the idea of creating something or, doing something, and we get stressed about it. So that is such a big takeaway of like your mindset going into it was let it be easy,
Mhm.
and it therefore it was.
Yeah, yeah,
And like
absolutely.
and you were okay when it wasn't, you didn't let the days that it didn't feel like it was coming naturally, like you didn't let that mean that you're not meant to be an author. This book isn't meant to happen. It was like, well, today it's not flowing, and that's okay. That
Yep, yep.
flexibility is so huge.
Yeah, it's priceless. And it's like I just had to be careful of when like I was giving myself too much grace, like when it's not flowing was turning into I don't want to do it today. So that's like the flip side of having so much flexibility is you do have to like be like, no, like I said, I was because you really should like you can't force writing. If you force it, it's not gonna sound right. It's not gonna sound like your voice. It's not gonna sound what you want. So you really can't. But when it would become too many days or too many times that I would sit down, like I would have to really get honest with myself and be like, am I procrastinating or is this really a block right now? Because having that flexibility is like, why had nobody to answer to? So if I don't feel like writing today, then I don't feel like writing today. But I tried to make like a schedule. So not like a strict, I have to write every day for 1 hour, but I would be like, okay, I see in my calendar that I have time Saturday afternoon. So I'm going to just put writing on my calendar there. Or if it was because I started over the summer, so I was off at the time. So I'd be like, okay, like I have no appointments, nothing on Wednesday. So I don't have a time, but I'm like, I'm doing some writing on Wednesday. And like that helped me. So it was a flexible schedule, but having that mindset of letting it be easy and that this is my passion made it so much more fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so I do want to just bring that home for everybody listening that Erica worked a full-time job, started a book, published a book, all within, how long did that take you?
It was, I started, I believe, in like June, July, and it was October of the following year. So, like a little bit over a year.
A little bit over a year to put together a lifelong dream. Like it's just incredible to
Exactly.
put in perspective because I think we just get so caught up on timelines, and it's this big overwhelming thing, and really it's a year of your life. Like it goes by like that. Now you have a book in the hands of those who want it. Like it's incredible. And I know you're inspired to write your second book, right?
I am. I still don't have any idea on what it's going to be about, but I was itching to write the next one while I was still finishing up that one. Like I just had so much fun with it that I was like, this is not going to be my only book. So I trust that the content will come to me, but it's not in the works yet, unfortunately. I have other things
But
going on.
yeah. Yeah. Well, I think it will hit when it's right. So I love that.
Exactly.
So I do want to talk just about a couple of the chapters in your book that I really loved. So the first chapter is love yourself first. And I just want to hear why you started here and why this is like essentially the foundation and the introduction to all of the work that you're inviting people to do in this book.
Yeah, I definitely think that loving yourself is where you need to start because, there's that saying that you can't love anybody else until you love yourself. And while there's a level of truth to that, I don't believe it 100% because I feel like I was capable of the emotion of love while I was not loving myself. But I believe that you don't accept what you're worth if you don't love yourself. So while I was able to feel love for other people, friendships, relationships, all of it, I was settling and I was accepting much less than I was worth because I didn't love myself. And therefore, I didn't think there was anything better or more out there for me. And I think that that's why it's such a great place to start because as you grow the love for yourself, your confidence grows right along with you and you raise the bar for yourself. So you're no longer going to settle for things that you used to settle for that aren't serving you just because they're there. And you really start to own and understand your worth. You get clarity on what you want and what you deserve. And it just makes all the difference in the world. And I didn't realize that until I actually felt what it was like to like myself. Because I think in the midst of it, I didn't realize that I didn't like myself. I always thought I was a great person, but feeling that love and doing this inner work changed everything. And I think that that's why everybody needs to start there so that they can stop settling for less than they deserve.
Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Like when you said like you didn't like yourself, what did that look like for you?
For me, it looked a lot like codependency. And that is something that I have been diving into more recently with my passions, with my work, just that codependent piece that goes along with the lack of self love and the lack of awareness around that. So when I first started, I've now realized that it's shown up in many aspects of my life. But when I first started and became aware of this, it was very heavy into my romantic relationships. So while I always thought, like, I do everything for you, I'm the best girlfriend ever, like, you're so lucky to have me, like, I'm so giving, I'm so loving, all the things. Really, my belief was that I would not be happy if I wasn't in a relationship. So I settled for relationships that were not model relationships, to say the least. Some were even toxic. And I was like, well, I have to fix this. Like, I'm a giver and I love you. So I'm going to fix you because there's nobody else out there for me. So it's so realizing that, like, it really showed up as codependency for me. And that was one of the biggest things that I started healing. I'm still working on it. It's very hard to heal 100%. But I've later realized that it showed up that way in my friendship. Like, just because I didn't want to lose a friendship, then I would put up with things that, weren't 50-50 or weren't, serving me or were toxic again. And it's just, I had to really learn to love who I was so that I can stop accepting less. And like I said, just raise that bar for myself.
Totally. And that shows, I mean, obviously you're in a very healthy, loving relationship now. So that speaks volumes to the work that you've done. But I see what you're saying also, it impacts your trust in yourself so much, right? Because it almost makes you like not think that you're capable of making good decisions for yourself. And when you don't feel like that, when you don't feel like you're making good decisions in your relationships, in, the boundaries that you're able to set or not set, like, it's hard to have a deeper trust for yourself to make big shifts in your life, to do the career change, to stand up for what you deserve in a relationship, all of those things. Like, if your lack of trust in yourself is not there, those things are going to feel nearly impossible to do. And it sounds like that's where you were for a long time, like feeling stuck in those cycles.
Yeah, because the fear runs the show. So while fear is inevitable, and even in the best of situations, anytime there's a possible change or anything like that, fear shows up. That's its job. But when you are in a state of not trusting yourself, not loving yourself, not believing in yourself, like that fear is running the show for you. So you're not really making those bad decisions. The fear is, because for me, it was like, well, the idea of being alone is worse than being in this toxic situation. And that's the fear, because in my head, if I was alone, that was like the worst thing that could ever happen. But as it turns out, for
Mhm.
me, one of the biggest things to learn to love myself was to remain single for a year and a half. And had I not done that, I probably wouldn't have been in the right place to have the relationship that I have now. So it's like you're just
Mhm.
letting the fear make all those decisions for you, because it thinks that the outcome is worse than the situation that you're currently in.
Yeah. And if you end up alone, then obviously that means that you're not lovable, you're not worthy, you're not all these things, when actually that's the opposite. You're just recognizing that you're worthy of more and you're deserving of more. So, yeah, that's interesting. And that's, I would say, a real fear that a lot of us have, for
Yeah.
sure.
And it goes for anything. It goes for the job too. Like I placed a lot of my success on my job. So that's like another codependent pattern that, like, well, I'm not going to be successful if I don't have a job. And I still have those thoughts sometimes, like I said, of like, my God, like, what am I doing with my life? Like, I'm not working, like, and it shows up everywhere. So if you don't have that foundation with yourself, I think it's very hard to release those patterns and those tendencies.
hmm Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I couldn't agree more. That's where it all begins. Like if there are areas of your life that feel off or that feel like you're stuck, like truly take a look at that. Like
Mhm.
how much do you love and trust yourself? Because there's a lot there that you
Always.
can, yeah. So another chapter in your book that I love is chapter 5 is dance parties. And I just have to talk about this because it sounds like, well, that's what you're going to touch on, Sarah, the dance party. But it's so much bigger. So Erica, if you follow her or if you follow her after this, she does dance parties on her social media. And really it's her normally in the morning is when you do it. And it's just you making your pre-workout and feeling yourself and sending out some like words of inspiration for whoever needs it that day and also for yourself, I'm sure, in the moment. And tell me about like how those came to be and why they're so important to you.
So they are probably the silliest thing I ever do in my life, and also the best. They're so fun, and they were one of my biggest confidence boosters overall, because they started back in 2020. I was part of like a team, I guess you could say, for body. I do the like at home workouts. So like, who the my coach that signed me up, like, you're all like part of the team or whatever. So I would watch them, and they would do that with their pre-workout and all that stuff. And I'd be like, oh my God, I can never do that. And it was like one day that she just like messaged everyone and like, let's do a cumulative dance party type of thing. Like everybody do it to the same song. And like I did it and I posted it, and I was just laughing at myself the whole time. Like it was ridiculous. It was to a Shania Twain song. Like it was awful. But it but it was so funny, and I just kind of slowly just kept going from there. And I've done it where I didn't really have any words to it back then. It was just fun to watch. I started doing like fun facts for people to learn little things about me, and then they turned into like the inspirational, and that's like really where it felt like home, because that's what I love to do, is just spread inspo any way that I can. So yeah, it hypes me up for my workout, and I just hope that it hypes other people up just with the inspiration that I'm sharing, or at least if nothing else gives them a good laugh.
Yeah, well, I'll be honest, for me, like I remember like the when I first saw you doing it, I was like, there was like this like hint of jealousy of like, well, how does she feel so comfortable doing that? And like that, the thought of doing that makes me want to actually like curl up in a ball and die.
It's so
And I'm
funny you say that too, because I still have one of my goals for social media is to show up and like talk on my stories. And I have that same feeling. Like I see you like showing up and talking, and I'm like, man, it's so hard for me. Like I get so nervous, but yet there I am dancing like a fool with no problems.
totally. Well, and I'm sure that that like has it built your confidence?
Yes,
The
absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely.
it's bold to go out and to like put words with it. Like I have something to say, I'm going to grab your attention and yeah, look at me like I'm owning who I am and what I enjoy and the way I look and the way I move. And it's like it's inspiring from my end. I just want you to know that. But I could also see how it would be just a huge confidence booster for you to just like claim that for yourself. And I think that so many of us are just terrified to put ourselves out there, do something different that like not everybody's doing. When if that feels good to you, it's probably going to be one of the most liberating things you could do, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've come to the conclusion that no one really cares as much as you do. Like in the beginning, I thought I looked like such a complete fool, like such an idiot that nobody would even want to watch them because like who wants to watch me dance around like that? And like I would like take a week off or something and people would be like, I miss the dance parties. And I'm like, really? So it's like no one really cares as much as you do. And the good thing about stories too is they're gone in 24 hours. So if you look back and you're like, "Ooh, that was a bad one," it's gone. No one will remember.
Yeah. Yes. I know that feeling. Yeah, I agree. And I do think that when we're yeah, no one cares as much as we think they do. And no one is being as critical of us as we're being of ourselves. That's for damn sure.
Absolutely. And I still like I'll do it no problem and post it on social media, but if my boyfriend is here, I won't do it in front of him.
Like this is
he
for the
can
world.
go he can go watch it, but I won't do it in front of him. So that's going to be fun when we finally move in together. But yeah, it's like it's weird how confidence works and where you feel comfortable and where you still have work to do, but whatever it is that makes you feel good and you have fun doing and you want to put it out there, it's like just do it because it's going to make a world of difference. You're going to feel good, and again, no one's going to care as much as you do. So just have a blast.
Yeah, I love it. I love that you do it. You maybe someday you'll see me dancing on myself up
I
to
would
date.
love it. Make sure you tag me.
Oh, I 100% will. I'll have your book in my hand. So the other chapter that I want to talk about is investing in yourself because honestly, I was like, I not surprised is maybe not the right word, but I was like, wow, that was like bold of you to create a chapter on that and like talk about the importance of that. And I feel like for me, I've invested in myself a lot. And so I know the value of it. And I'm always preaching it to other people. But I think that a lot of people might not understand like why is that so important. So I'd love to hear. First of all, I know you've invested in yourself time and time again. You mentioned that even writing a book, you invested in a course that was going to help you with self-publishing. When you were working on your own self-love journey, you invested in a mentor that was going to dive deep into that with you. When you were ready to shift careers, you invested in me. And so you practice what you preach in that one for sure. But tell me, like, why did that earn a chapter in your book?
I feel like it earned a chapter and it earned chapter two because I think it's really hard to do this alone. I think that there is so much information out there that if you don't have accountability in like certain aspects of it, you're just going to be entirely overwhelmed. Like I think it's a reason why I never even thought to work on myself until 2020 when I started noticing like these women doing little workshops and things like that. And that's when I was going through a toxic breakup. And I was like, huh, I'm so worried about all these other people in my life. And I have never focused on me. And it was right at the height, it was right when lockdown hit. So I had nowhere to go, nowhere to be, nothing to do. I lived alone. And I was like, well, this is the perfect time to go all in on me and see what these things are all about. Like, I had never really read a personal development book before. I was never really into it. I just didn't know about it really. And so I feel like I made it chapter 2 because chapter 1 is love yourself, and that's where it starts. But it's really important to have help in whatever way that looks like. So I was fortunate enough to be able to invest in life coaches, in, excuse me, in you, in therapy, in whatever I needed, in courses, in programs. But I also have a whole section in there about ways that you can invest in yourself for free, because I think that's a big misconception too, is that investing in yourself is not only paying for things. Yes, those are deeper and maybe they would be more helpful, but if you don't have the financial means right now, like, there's nothing wrong with that. And there's so much free resources out there that you can invest your time. And I have gotten so much value from the free things, from listening to podcasts, from um, just free, like I put in there, like, a lot of mentors, coaches, all of that, including myself, offer freebies. And it can be very beneficial. And, maybe your goal is to get one of their bigger programs one day, but start with what they're offering you for free. And it's just so important to have somebody on your side, someone that has been through it. I think the experience is a big thing for me too. And that's why I was so attracted to working one-on-one with you after I heard your podcast episode, because I was like, she went through exactly what I'm going through right now. Like, I need help with that. And I signed up that like the next week. And
Mhm.
so it's just, I really think it's important to have somebody in your corner. And even if that's not someone you can directly talk to, but through a free service that they're providing, it's so beneficial to not go at this alone because it can be wildly overwhelming.
Oh, 100%. I mean, that's the beauty of the internet, right? Is that everything is so accessible, but it's also a huge downfall
Mhm.
because it's like, it's overwhelming. Like, it's like, where do you start? What's right? What's right for you? And I do think that the investing in yourself, it is like, it's the ultimate act of self-love, right? It's saying like, and you're saying, of course, there's so many free resources, but you invest monetarily in yourself and your growth and your development. It is like you are putting a stake in that like you never have before. And like it makes it so much harder to fail, honestly, because you're more committed. You're gaining trust in yourself for showing up for yourself in that way. And to your point, you have somebody there, you have somebody holding you accountable and cheering you on. And sometimes like that is more what we need than anything. It's like those moments that we do get in our head, those moments that we doubt ourselves when the logic wants to take over, to have somebody to lean on to support you. It is just such a game changer and is going to get you where you're going 5 times faster, right? Like, I mean,
Absolutely.
look
Yeah,
at that. Sorry, go ahead.
oh, that's okay. Yeah, I was going to say the same thing, that it like speeds up the process, and like, this kind of work is not something you can rush through, but it helps you know exactly what you need to do to get there and who you need to be to get there. And while I would never tell someone to put themselves, excuse me, into debt to, you know, invest in something, if you have a way to make it work, it is just invaluable to work with somebody one on one. So,
Mhm.
whether you can get therapy through your insurance, whether you can find someone that's within your budget, like whatever you have to do to make it work, if you can, I would highly recommend some one on one help, because it really does 5 times the process, as you said.
100%. I mean, look at that. When you say that like 2020 was when you really jumped in, like that's insane to think about
Mhm.
what you've accomplished in that short amount of time of changing your relationship with yourself, changing your relationship with men in general, right? Because you found the love of your life, writing a book, like leaving the career, like all of these things. I mean, you would think that that would take a decade and you've
Right?
done it in under 4 years. It's
Yep. Yeah.
mind blowing.
Yeah. There's nothing better than investing in yourself. It's always worth it. Like there's always that risk. And I think that, my logical brain does it. I research and overthink everything that I invest in. So I think a lot of people, especially if they've never done it before, are worried like it's not going to work or it's not going to be worth the cost. And like, are you actually paying for the product or for the name if it's a, high end person that you're working with? But I can say with confidence that I have never invested in anything that didn't bring anything to the table. So, of course, there's going to be a risk that maybe that wasn't worth the amount that I paid. Maybe I think it should be cheaper, but I got this, this, and this out of it. Like, I have never chosen to invest in something that I was like, well, that was awful and didn't give me anything. So, as long as you do a little bit of research, know who you're investing in, you'll be okay, and it will be helpful 10 times over.
Yeah, I could not agree more. And so one other way that you invested in yourself, which was also incredibly bold, was coming to my retreat. And I know for a fact that that was scary as shit for you. To fly across the country, putting essentially all your trust in me that I'm going to provide something that's going to be beneficial for you, that you're going to feel safe there and comfortable with, women that you don't know. So can you tell me a little bit about that and like what made you pull the trigger on that one, Erica?
Well, long story short, and I will get into the long story, but I trusted you. And that's what it came down to. So we worked together for, I think it was like 8 weeks. I think we had like 2 months together. And in that time together, I mean, you lit a fire under me. You completely reframed my definition of success. Like you really helped me get through that transition period of deciding that it was time for me to move on. So I already had that trust and that knowledge that you're amazing at what you do and what you provide to your clients. And on top of always wanting to attend a retreat and always wanting to see Colorado because I had never been. I was the minute you said you were hosting a retreat, I was like, I'm in. That's it. And
You were the first one.
it was. And I, in building the love for myself, one of the things I did was go on solo trips. So I was familiar with traveling by myself. However, it was the first time that I had flown by myself. And it was scary because I mean, I knew you from our work together, but I had never even met you in person. So that was the first time. But I was craving connection and being around other like-minded women and just being in nature and all of it. Everything that you were offering sounded so amazing. And it helped, like I said, that I trusted you. So I see sponsored ads all over the internet for retreats that look absolutely amazing, but I don't know anything about the people. So I would have to do research and make sure that it was right for me. With you, I already knew it was right for me because I've worked with you before. So it made the decision pretty easy. And it was everything I expected and more. So I left with new friends and a full heart and a lit up soul. And it was just amazing and beautiful.
Well, thank you. And thanks for being so bold and making that decision. Cause I loved it. It like meant so much to me that you were there, honestly, and that you traveled that far to be there. But it also, I think, just shows like your commitment to yourself and to your growth and what you're willing to do for that. And like putting yourself out there like that is not the easy path. And I wanted you to share that because I know that there's women out there like currently making that decision of like, oh, can I do this? Is it scary? Is it going to be good? And yeah, you're sitting on the other side of that decision and you're like, yes, it was everything I needed and more.
Yeah.
But but you followed the knowing, and it's so huge. And
Absolutely.
such an act of self-love. So, well, Erica, I'm going to plug your book for you real quick. So You Are the Vibe. I do want to read your dedication because I think this is like really special and telling. but your dedication was to everyone who is ready to reintroduce themselves to the world. This one's for you. And I thought that was like, what a beautiful, like, just summary of what this book is meant to do. It really is you just taking a look at what's working and what's not working and what you want to shift in your life. And I could not recommend it more. But I would also love for you to tell them anything else that you have going on that's exciting right now, where they can find you online, or anything else you want to share.
Okay, thank you. First, a little shameless plug for you. If anyone out there is on the fence about Sarah's retreat, just book it, just go. You won't regret it.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll take it.
As for me, I am most active on Instagram, so you can find me at @she_is_Erica Marie. My book is available on Amazon. If you do follow me on Instagram, I have a whole highlight of all of those inspirational dance parties that you are free to binge, plus all the new ones that are in the works. And my book is the main thing that's available from me right now. I have a freebie on my link tree in my bio on Instagram, and I am currently working on a much more valuable freebie and a whole course on self-love and codependency and self-awareness. So I am looking forward to sharing that with everyone as it progresses.
I love that. And I love to hear that you're doing that, because I know that's going to be impactful for anyone that comes into your world. So I'm going to link Erica and her book in the show notes. And yes, thank you so much for being here, Erica. It's been great to connect with you like this. And I love your story so much, and I find it so inspiring. So I was very excited to share it with my listeners.
Thank you. And thank you for having me. This was an amazing conversation, and I appreciate you helping me share my story, spread it with the world.
To those of you that tune in every single week, thank you. I hope you already know just how much I love you. If you are just finding me or just stepping into my work, welcome. I am so happy that you are here. You can find more of me and my work on Instagram at Freely Sarah Heredia. I also am hosting a women's self-discovery retreat May 20th through 22nd at the most fabulous location here in the Rocky Mountains of Colorado. And I still have space for you to join me there. If you are looking for more consistent support and community, I want to tell you about my women's group, The Nest. We offer a monthly membership where you have access to the entire community of amazing women who are doing big things and crushing life, plus all the calls that we have throughout the month. Or you can drop into any single call that we have that interests you. So you can find more on all of this and all of my work through the link in the show notes. But no matter how long you have been with me, thank you for being here. And truly, I would love to see more of you.